Hello everyone, this is LEGO's take on the Star Wars AT Hauler, featured very prominently in the Solo movie, but now we find out, also canonically present just off-screen in many, or around and before many of the battles that we're familiar with that we liked very much in other parts of the Star Wars universe. Now the proportions of this LEGO model are definitely off relative to the actual in-universe design, but they're not bad. I think that the designer did a good job of capturing the essence of the AT Hauler and capturing kind of its mechanical soul. And when you look at it from most angles, this is not a common angle. I'm using it to show you some of the details a little bit better. But from most normal angles of play and display, you look at it and you immediately see what it is and it makes sense. What I don't like is the view from back around here where you just see so many of the different colored pieces. The Technic parts in red and blue and tan, and some of them just look unfinished. Fortunately, technically, this is not supposed to be the landed pose for this. This is not how it's supposed to land in universe. Instead, to take up less space on the ground, these side booms fold up, and they also have landing skids or pads that fold out. That's a pretty cool little trick there. And if I just bring it over here so you can see it a little bit more easily, they are semi-linked together. And then that's the proper stance for this on the ground, which definitely isn't as elegant, but this was not designed to be pretty in universe. It was designed to be a crane. It's something that just moves cargo around, and as that, it needed to have function over form. But this LEGO model still has a lot of stuff that's again done for function over form, but it really hurts the form even more in this format. For instance, these grappling claws or jaws, which by default are able to just move about freely. And here's another thing that's a little bit awkward. These booms are independent of one another, but it can get a little bit unwieldy sometimes when you're trying to just kind of swoosh it around. If you grab one side and it's kind of moving around weird, but these, they just flop around all the time. So if you're flying with this, then they're always going to be kind of hanging down, and then when you bring it up into this upright position for landing, they stick out still quite a bit. Now, the in-universe models do have this sort of structure, but it's just much more subtle. However, those are important for the sake of play, and they have a weird function built into them. There are all these pieces that go down the core of each of these booms to allow you to open this up from the side, right here, from what looks like the pivot. So that goes through, allows you to hook, and that exists on either side. And they include a sample bit of cargo in this. And the idea is that you would open up the claws, the jaws, and then come underneath your cargo. In this case, it has a little adapter on it. Line up with the holes on the little cargo adapter there and be able to pick it up and fly off with it. That's cool, except, to be honest, you don't need to use that feature at all. You can just fly this thing right up, line up the holes, don't even spread them out at all. It's basically a spreader setup, and that's it. And that actually is a lot more smooth and slick and cool. So I actually kind of feel like this whole feature here is useless, and there was a lot of engineering that went into it, and a lot of parts that went into it that were unnecessary, just add to the cost and complexity of the model. Maybe could have been used to cover some things up and make it look a little bit nicer from around the back. Now, this is an important area. You need to be able to have people who can cross through there. You can place minifigures in there, and they suggest that. They've got the little handrails only on one side, the front end of that, but you can put figures in there. So, about one on either side is what you'll do. You see some gearing in here that's not really used. That's just for the sake of adding friction to the system. So there's a friction axle pin there. So the boom is able to kind of fall with gravity on its own if you just leave it, but it's just to slow it down, to keep it from doing anything weird. You can also bring these down. These are used for something that wasn't seen in the Solo movie. That's actually used when these haulers are transporting walkers. They bring those down to kind of help center the whole thing, and then they grab walkers from underneath this rear main fuselage area. So some of the concept art shows this, and that's a pretty good look right there. Although the scale isn't quite proper, you can make it work. You just need to adapt it. You definitely need to add in quite a number of pieces to actually make something like this happen. So that's a case where you need to have your own parts and do a good amount of customization. You can't really grab the AT-STs just directly from the top, but these were also intended to be used to drop AT-ATs. And I like that. I like that idea. I like that general look. But again, you need to create the adapters yourself, and it's not going to be a simple affair to make that actually work. It's too bad they didn't have any consideration for that, or even offer up, instructions online for how to make that work. But this is the intent in universe. But what about the AT Hauler attack on the Convey-X transport? Well, that's what we saw in the Solo movie, and that is one place where you need to use the opening jaws to get a little bit more clearance around the ends of the train car there for the pickup. And you just need to kind of work those ends in there a bit. And you do need to hold this from both booms to make sure it's nice and steady. If you just let go with one, the other will start to pull up and angle inconveniently. So this is not the most secure thing, not the most confidence-inspiring thing to do for the sake of play. It's actually not even caught on there properly. If I keep messing around with this, it's gonna fall off. It's looking pretty dicey there. But yeah, I mean, it does the trick. It does what it's supposed to do. It's able to pick it up, which is good, but it doesn't feel. There it goes. It doesn't feel right, and it doesn't work as well as it should. And the jaw mechanism feels unnecessary. They could have just allowed these to pivot right here at the end, and then they could have had I believe a simpler mechanism, a simpler hook to get those to attach. This is just this is awkward. Honestly, it's awkward. The control cab cockpit section of the model has a stud shooter on either side for basic point defense, and you can just open up the whole roof to get access to the interior, which has a single seat, and they have a couple of nice stickers there for console displays. The sample cargo box included with this set is a little bit undersized, but that's why they have the spreader there in brown, and it's just kind of like you need to think of this as a 20-foot container, like an intermodal container being connected to a crane that's designed to handle 40-foot containers. So this is just an adapter for that. You can leave that off to make it look a little bit more normal. You also might want to remove these Technic pin pieces, the modified tiles, I guess they are. The sticker sheet that I got with this set had a little bit of misalignment issue, so the red line is supposed to be consistent across, the black line is supposed to be consistent across, but they're just, again, a bit off there. And you can open this up, and inside the cargo for this one is a little bit boring. It's just a rifle rack, so 4 long guns. Nice to get those. Those are definitely going to be useful for especially folks who don't like the stud shooters that come in some of the sets. You can replace them with these good looking ones, and there's just a single sticker on the top there. And I like the transparent red section of this. It looks like it actually has light inside when you have some light coming from behind it. For figures, here are Kira and Val. I think that a lot of Westworld fans will be very glad to have an official Lego Thandie Newton face, at least. Swap that out for some custom figures, some easy custom figures. The prints, by design, I think are good, but the quality of printing for the Val figure is not that great, just in the white sections. You get some poor opacity, you get some inconsistency there. Definitely better quality on the Kira figure in this case. Also, it looks like the alignment is again off between the two faces on each head here, because when I turn these around 180 degrees, now they're looking off to the side, whereas when they're facing directly towards you, they're looking pretty much directly toward you. So I think that's a little slip that's occurring more and more frequently, and Lego needs to do a little back-end recalibration. These are Dryden's guards, and I am pleasantly surprised that they actually went ahead with 2 separate faces. Those are 2 separate prints, turning these into, 2 separate part IDs for those heads, and that's cool. It's so much better than having 2 absolutely identical ones. It gives them, I guess, more purpose to actually exist, so they don't just look like clones. There are no minifigure heads to be seen under there because of the shaping, the way it had to be narrow around the neck. I actually like the printing on the backs of the torsos, as simple as it is. Just seems about right to me. Yeah, these were pretty well executed, in my opinion. And then here we have Rio Durant. A lot went into this one because they had to come up with the new double arm piece, which is pretty cool and pretty right, I think. It's actually usable. You have a decent range of motion there. You can use the upper arm in a fairly normal way, but the lower arm is still usable when you have it at an angle like that. They basically just took the model for a single arm, copied it, rotated one, kept them intersected, and probably did a little bit of work in the intersection area itself, leaving that a little bit thicker and a little bit smoother, but it works, and it functions as a standard arm, fits into a normal arm socket. And then this headpiece is very cool. It has the visor attachment, uses just the standard visor system, so that works out pretty well. And I think the printing on this is really good. There's a lot of detail on the torso print especially. Let me actually pull that up so you can see that just a little bit better. Some of the additional print that goes all the way up to the top that's normally obscured by the facial hair. There's no minifig head underneath this one either because it's a full sculpt, but around the back you get more printing as well. This is a well done little figure. In the final analysis, I think this set is just over engineered. I think the price is okay. I think a little bit cheaper would have been better, but given all the stuff that's inside of this that you really build up, you have to build it, I think, to get a feel for just how much is involved here. I think that the value is actually pretty decent. However, given the fact that I think it's over-engineered, I believe they could have left out a lot of that, had a much simpler build that would have been just as playable, if not possibly even a little bit easier to play with, especially if the booms weren't able to move independently, and it still would have done everything that you wanted. It still could have picked up cargo, and just would have been just fine as a toy, and maybe even a little bit better as a display model than it is right now because of all the Technic pieces that are visible. So yeah, I think they did a pretty good job, but probably tried to do a little bit too much with it. I would have preferred simpler mechanisms and a little bit more focus on the finishing details, getting it to look a little bit nicer, a little bit more complete. Some of this stuff in here looks about 10 years old in terms of the evolution of Lego's design standards. But there you have it. Those are my thoughts. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for my next video, which is on the way soon.